Okay. Poll review. Woo. Yeah, okay. So my cat was just on my lap, and I guess she decided to leave when I did my little intro there. So, drove the fool poll review. This is the seventh episode of poll review, and if this is your first time tuning in, I do the daily poll series on exclusively games.com. Not official or anything like that. Just do it for fun. And basically, every week I go through 7 of the daily polls and talk about, the topic, why I chose it, and go through the results and then the replies in the community. So, um, daily poll 44 was, have you played licensed games? And this is, I say a lot of them are just ones that just pop in my mind, and this was definitely one of them. So, and this one was a pretty boring one, I'd say. Most people have either played many licensed games or they played a few, and then one person said that they don't play licensed games. So most people have played some sort of licensed game, and licensed meaning like it was like a Star Wars game or like a something from like a movie or a comic or a book, licensed to be a game. So Retro84 says he's played quite a few, a lot of which are really good games, in his opinion, of course. And then there's Capcom, their line of Disney games from the NES and SNES era. He says his favorites are DuckTales and Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. Sega also did very well with games like Castle of Illusion. Virgin Interactive had some fun games that he rather enjoyed, like Aladdin and Cool Spot. Then there's Traveler's Tales with Mickey Mania and Toy Story. Yeah, I mentioned Telltale in the post in the initial poll, and he agrees that they've done a good job with the games that he's played, at least. And I agree with that for the most part. I mean, it's sad that Telltale isn't around anymore, since they sort of went stagnant with their game design. But I really liked most of The Walking Dead. I played everything but the final season of The Walking Dead, because it's an Epic exclusive, probably until next year. And I never played Michonne's Tales. I did play like the 400 Days like side story thing, but I never played Michonne's little thing. But for the most part, Walking Dead sort of fell off a cliff after season 1 in terms of quality. It was still like decent, I'd say, but after season 1 of Walking Dead, I don't think Telltale ever really got to the point where they were as good as they were when they wrote that story. That's just my opinion. But I only really played Walking Dead from Telltale, but that's a bit of a sidestep. So Jack of Tears, also active in the poll, says absolutely be difficult to be a gamer for long, and I have done so. He's played the entire Witcher series, several Telltale games, loved Tales from Borderlands, all the old Disney games like DuckTales, Rescue Rangers, Darkwing Duck, and more. Superhero games of all sorts, Star Wars, the list goes on and on. Twidget, active in the polls, says he's plays a few. He's played a few, but own many that he hasn't. Backlog strikes again. None that I've played or in my backlog are sports games. Okay, so that's a pretty definitive one. Like I said, but I'll leave links to all the polls that I talk about in the description. So if you want to go through them, more of the replies, then you can do so. But I want to, in the interest of time, not look through too many. Daily poll 43 is, how often do you go to GameStop? And this was one that, it wasn't like the specific day when this happened, but it was pretty recent when GameStop announced that they had lost like $690 million, like close to $700 million. That's what I said in the post. And so I just wanted to ask, how often do people go to GameStop? And there's one by my mall, and I've been there a couple of times, but most of the games that I buy, usually get them from Amazon because it's just easier. And I mean, I know my college town had a GameStop by it, but it was like way out of walking distance, so I just buy the games from Amazon, and then they get shipped to me, and then that's how I've gotten like every PlayStation exclusive that I've played for over a year now, like since Shadow of the Colossus, and the Switch as well. Basically, every physical Switch game I've bought, I think except for like Mario Kart 8 and Breath of the Wild, I've gotten I've gotten from Amazon. I think I've gotten some, I've gotten some Switch games as gifts, but everyone that I've bought, I've just bought from Amazon because I got Prime. I remember when Prime had the 20% discount. It was such a good way to save money, but now they got rid of it. But this one, most people never gone to GameStop, and the problem with this one was a lot of people don't live in the States. A good amount of people who are forum members don't live in the States, so that sort of messes with things, and because GameStop's basically, I think they operate in America exclusively, and they own EB Games, which is like in Canada and Australia, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's generally the GameStop brand is basically an American chain of stores. So for members like I think Bolta, and I know Bolta doesn't live in the States, he lives in Europe, so that sort of messes with the results. But most people have never gone to GameStop. Most people used to go to GameStop. Some go a few times a month. Some go several. Just 2 people go several times a week, and 11 people go a few times a year. Which is, I'm pretty sure I answered this one. Majestic Boer Goat says he's pretty active in the polls. And I still don't know if I'm saying, like, Majestic can go fine, but Boer, I don't know. If you ever watch this video, Goat, you have to tell me how to say your name, because I want to say it correctly. I used to buy he says he used to buy most of his video games from GameStop. However, when Senran Kagura Estial Versus, or is it Festival Versus, was released a few years ago, they sent my copy to the wrong address and refused to refund me for it. That was the last time I did business with them. I can definitely understand not wanting to do business after something like that happens. And I switched up some of the polls. So this is daily poll 43, and then the last one was 44. I'm sorry about that. So a bit out of order. Sorry about that. Even Saito, active in the polls. Glad that doesn't go to GameStop anymore. Retro84 used to. Notice that people have gripes about the store, but the GameStop over where I live is pretty good. When it comes to getting a hold of collector's editions and hard to find games, they did their job. Yeah, I'll say, like, for basically most of the individual GameStops I've been to, most of the most of the, like, the people who actually work at GameStop, they're usually pretty nice, and they're, like, usually gamers, so they, you can talk with them about games and stuff, and it's usually a decent time. But it's just the corporate culture and the business outlook of that store isn't good, and the fact that they're just pouring all their money into the Thinky crap. I mean, that's what half the store is when you walk into GameStop. It's just like, Rick and Morty stuff, the Funko Pop figures, which, I mean, if you like that stuff, and I don't blame you, but if I'm, like, walking into a GameStop and I want to buy games, or I want to look at games, not, look at Rick and Morty t-shirts, or, like, Portal mugs, or whatever the hell. And, I mean, if you watched, like, Spawn Waves videos on, the teardowns of refurbished systems he's done from GameStop, they don't refurbish systems correctly from how it seems. So you're probably better off if you want to get like a retro system, not retro, but you want to get an older system like a 360 or a PS3. You're probably just better off doing it from eBay. So there really isn't much of a reason for GameStop unless you're just like at the mall, and you just don't want to be in Hollister or whatever, the hell, the other members of your family are doing. So that's usually why I go to GameStop, because my sisters are buying makeup or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not doing that, so I just go to GameStop. And even if I don't buy anything, just like browsing around and looking at the games, and hearing like hearing the promotionals for new games and stuff like that. So when GameStop goes, I'm going to be sad, but it's not like I didn't see the writing on the wall. And I think it's what most people have said here. Said Twitch used to look for cheap original Xbox and PS1 games at GameStop. In years since I've been one, and just with the rise of digital gaming and the fact that GameStop doesn't really focus on games anymore, I think that's driven most people either to just buying things off of Amazon or going to the bigger retailers or whatever. So, but that's it for Daily Poll 43. I meant to sort of messed up, but we'll go on to Daily Poll 45, and I'm looking at the top of my tabs, and I think I've got the rest of them in order. And this is do you play retro games? Another one that just sort of popped into my head without any specific reason for it. So most people said they've played some retro games, and I've got a SNES Classic and a NES Classic. I've got them both to the side there. I would have to reach out to get one, but I have them. Thinking about getting the Genesis Classic because that thing looks like it'll be pretty cool. I was just looking at it, the box looks really nice, and like that's part of the experience for me, just getting a nice box. And I was too young for the for the set for when Sega made hardware, because the Dreamcast came out in the year I was born. That was their last console, so I wasn't around when Sega was in the hardware game. But most people have played some retro games. A few people have used to play. 2 people used to play some. A good amount said they play many retro games, about 31%, and then 11% they don't play retro games. So Danks, is it Danks Macabre? I think that's how I say it. I haven't really seen him in the active in the polls too much. He plays lots of retro games, but he tends to binge for an evening or weekend and put it away for a while until I feel like playing on it again. At the moment, he likes to play Commodore 64 games from time to time. Man, Commodore 64 is really old. Thomas JCG. Occasionally, I'm not really moved by nostalgia. Sometimes just want a simple game, and that's what I love retro games. One of my favorite games on the SNES Classic is Castlevania 4. It's such a good game, and it's just like simple, no frills. You just have a game, you just play it, and that's like the charm of all of these games, because with something Division 2, like I've gotten booted from the server. I never have to deal with that playing Super Mario Brothers. Nick says he's making his way through all the classic survival horror series, so I guess he's talking about like the older Resident Evil games, probably Alone in the Dark as well, maybe Clock Tower. Let's see, yeah, so Retro84 points to his username. Yeah, you could say he does like the classics. Of course, he plays current games too, so he doesn't only play retro games. Most spawned in the 8-bit and 16-bit eras of gaming, lots of great memories, and I can never seem to get tired of my favorite classics. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I view like Super Mario Sunshine. Like I got a copy of Super Mario Sunshine. Whenever I hear that music, I just I'll never get tired of that. So I can imagine. I can relate to that feeling of never getting tired of the games that you grew up with. So yeah, so that's a pretty good take from retro. So let's see, Cousin Ed. I've seen him in Daily Polls a few times. He plays some retro games occasionally, like a few times a year. He's got a SNES Classic, which he hasn't hacked yet. I might even get the Genesis Classic, depends on the quality. I have some retro games like Chrono Trigger on the DS and Final Fantasy 6 or 3 on the PS Vita. If you consider the PS1 to be retro, then I have even more like Final Fantasy 7 and Metal Gear Solid, which I do, because for the purposes of this poll, I said any game released in the 20th century, so 1999, anything released in 1999 or before. The PS1 definitely fits into that. But I think we'll move on to the 46th daily poll, which is, do you think we'll have a Nintendo Direct in April? And I did this because there was a rumor going around, I think it was Gaming Intel. They said that there would be a Nintendo Direct on the 11th, and it's April 16th today, and that hasn't happened yet. So I do think there might be one in April. I'm not sure. It's like anyone's guess at this point, but I could do a whole video on this, but the internet goes absolutely insane trying to predict like what Nintendo will do next, or we need to have this announcement. It's not just like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a Nintendo specific thing. It's just like the rumor mill is churning constantly, and I tune out like most of that stuff because I just like just like wait. I mean it's just like wait for the game companies to announce what they're going to announce. That's basically all you can do. It's just like the people like on 4chan or Reset Era just like constantly going over leaks and stuff. It's just I don't know, I just find it really stupid. But most people don't care about Nintendo Direct, so this poll didn't get a lot of traction with it. And I know whenever I talk about Nintendo Directs, they won't get any traction. So if I pick a bad topic, then it gets like under 100 views in the forum post, which is my fault. But I figured I couldn't come up with anything else, and I figured why not do this. So 27% said that. So after people just not caring about Directs, 27% said we'll get a Nintendo Direct in April. One person says we won't, and one person says we'll get a Nintendo Direct after April but before E3, which this could be a pretty likely thing because we did get a Nintendo Direct in April last year. There definitely is enough information for there to be a Nintendo Direct sometime in April, and it could be like another Smash Direct, which I don't think you need that to announce Joker. So it could be on April 24th when Atlas wants to like announce more stuff about Persona 5 Royal. That's when they're going to be talking about it more. So that's actually coming up pretty soon. When they'll talk about Persona 5 Royal, and since Joker's going to be in Smash, they might want to like coordinate so that way Persona 5 Royal news is out and Joker's in Smash, to like really hype up the community about the Persona franchise, which is a possibility. Or they could just do it sometime in May, but then that's so close to E3, you might as well just wait to shoot your shot during the E3 Direct and just make it like a 40-minute show and just like go all out talking about the stuff. You could even, and people were saying, oh, what about Super Mario Maker? That hasn't gotten a release date as far as I know, and they could just they honestly could just drop it in like July, or just say, oh, it's out today. And I mean, people are going to buy it because it's a Mario game, and it's a sequel to Mario Maker, which everyone loved on the Wii U. I mean, there's people who play Mario. There's people who still have the Wii U plugged into their TV just to play Super Mario Maker. I have my Wii U plugged in to play. Didn't buy. I have it plugged in because I want to play different games, but I haven't gotten around to doing that. But let's get into the reply since I rambled on for too long. Retro84 says he certainly. Okay, so it certainly doesn't. I certainly don't know, but I sure hope so. So just So it just say does. I can't speak. So Retro84 doesn't know, but he hopes so. So just say that's going to happen. Loves those Nintendo Directs. I love the mindset. I do really like the Nintendo Directs. They've been doing them for years and years and years, and I absolutely love them. They obviously I miss when Iwata did them, and obviously he can't do it anymore because he passed away about almost 4 years ago now. Very sad. And I was watching the one that they did April 1st, 2015, which was the last one he actually was in person for, and he didn't look too good, because he had cancer and everything. But just the fact, it's just the mindset with the Nintendo Direct, and that they started doing these in 2014. The whole Iwata Ass series was just this amount of transparency Nintendo was determined to have with the consumer. I really like it and really respect it. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a Nintendo fan, because Nintendo really respects their consumer base. If you look at how they do Nintendo Directs, I mean, they are pretty cryptic with when they do them, but when they do them, they're quick, they're punchy, they respect your time, and they just get into the points. There's not really much in the way of filler, and there's also what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, no, I just like just the whole Metroid Prime situation where they uploaded a video where you had one of the senior guys in Nintendo, I forgot what his name is, just talking about Metroid Prime 4, we gotta delay it, I'm sorry, but it's not the game that we wanted to be, so we're going to have Retro restart development. It's going to be a long time, but it's going to be a better game for it, and I can really respect that level of transparency. So since most people don't care, they're pretty tepid answers. So Thomas JCG probably, but I don't know for sure. Bolta 666 active in the polls. He'd like to say, however, it can be a Smash exclusive to tie in with Joker, and would expect it to be on the Persona reveal on the 24th. P.S. I would also like to have some final Reggie presents. Mother free. Whoa. Yeah, I definitely would like. Reggie, since he's retired now, they could have, he could have filmed his bit, announcing like a Mother free or just, doing it. And they could just, have it at E3 or have it at some other point. But I would like, Reggie to be in like one last direct and do like a Mother free announcement. That would be absolutely legendary. But to the point of it being a Smash exclusive, I don't think you need a Smash exclusive to announce, hey, Joker's out now. I think that can be like a 3-minute segment of a regular Nintendo Direct paced with a whole bunch of other stuff, because I said this a few minutes ago, but there is a lot of stuff that Nintendo would be best talking about before E3 to sort of prepare for that. And we've still got Astral Chain that's coming out in August. We've got, I think, the Ultimate Marvel Alliance 3 is coming out in July. There's still Super Mario Maker 2. There's Animal Crossing Bayonetta 3. More Fire Emblems coming out in July as well. We don't know much about that. So there's just a metric crap ton of stuff that Nintendo has coming out in 2019 and beyond that could definitely be in a Nintendo Direct. And I don't think Joker, since he's been teased before and we know that he's going to be in the game, I don't think we need a whole Smash Direct to talk about Joker. And if they want to reveal the next character in the Direct, they could just shove that in at the end as a little teaser and then say, oh, it's the guy from Dragon Quest, or a Capcom character, or whatever they're going to be, whatever the next character in the Smash is going to be that Nintendo wants it to be. So Wicked Wolf, he's pretty active in the polls, says he doesn't care all that much. Not to say I won't care about the games because I'm trying to increase his Switch, because he's trying to increase his Switch library, but someone on YouTube will cover it for me if there is one. Well, there probably will be, and I will probably cover the Nintendo Direct since I started YouTubing before, not before, but since I've started YouTubing, there has been a Nintendo Direct. So when one comes out, I'll probably do a thoughts video and the big points of it, since that'll be a pretty cool thing to do. But I think we're going to move on to the 47th daily poll, which is, do you think VR is the future? And this is another one that I just sitting around late at night just thinking, oh, I need to come up with the next daily poll topic, and it just pops into my head. I'm like, yes, do that. And it's so many of them where it's just 11, and I usually post these around midnight or so my time, because I'm in the East Coast. So if you're in West Coast, then it's 9. If you're in Europe, then it's really early in the morning. But for me, it's midnight, and that's when I usually post these up. Is midnight my time. And so I usually think late at night trying to think of something, and this is one of the topics where it's just a random one. It's a random one, but I think it's pretty interesting, and I think the community fall is pretty interesting because this got 49 votes, which is a pretty good amount, a lot more than the Nintendo Direct one to be sure. And most people say with VR that it will coexist and evolve. It will evolve and coexist with traditional games, which don't worry about that. Someone's riding a bike outside, but no, I think that's yard work. But VR will coexist with traditional, will evolve and coexist with traditional games, which I think is the intended goal of VR, because VR definitely isn't there yet to be as widely accepted by the average, consumer, video games. Because if you look at something like PlayStation 4, that's got close to 100 million sales. PSVR's got about 4 or 5 million sales, so there really isn't. There's a lot of interest in just playing games, because people are buying PlayStations, people are buying Switches, people are buying PCs, but not a lot of people are investing the amount of money into VR. And you could say, well, it's because there's it's because to get in you need to spend $300-400, and it's the pricing of it. But I think for a lot of people, they just don't want to the wires, and I mean that definitely is a factor. The pricing is the fact that there is, if you want to get an Oculus, it's $500. You want to get Vive, it's $700, which is going to put a lot of people off. But I think for a lot of people, it's just they can see that it isn't there yet, and there really isn't much in the way of must-play VR games. There isn't something like a Breath of the Wild that convinces people to buy it, Switch, or Super Mario Odyssey. There isn't a really good game that really uses VR and immerses you in some whole new world of gaming. It's just mostly really tepid walking simulators, or some meme games or things along that line. It's nothing really nothing worth pouring all this money into, and strapping the goggles to your face, and having all the wires and everything. I've used the Gear VR a bit. It's definitely a pretty interesting experience using a VR headset, but it's not something that I see myself replacing traditional games. Ones like play, mouse and keyboard or on TV because I mean I have the hardware for that. I can buy games for that, but I want to go VR, which I would someday. But it's like gotta spend all this money, gotta make sure I got the hardware correctly, and then it's like, well, I have all this hardware. What games I want to play? There's very few VR games that are worth, um, you know, they're worth buying standalone. And then you have to think, well, you got these games, I have to, pour in all the money, but I think most people will say it'll evolve, it will become better, and then it'll coexist with traditional games. About a quarter of you guys said it has no future and it's just a fad, and then few people, 6%, said VR games are the future and will replace traditional games as they evolve. Which it could be a possibility if we ever get to the point where we do. If we ever get to the point where the neural link is a thing, where you can just put in the neural link and then you can just be in Skyrim. I think like Tim Pool made a video about that, and if we ever get to the point where the neural link is a thing and you could just, for me, I would just put on neural link and then just, play Persona. That's what I would do. But it would just that would be a pretty interesting thing, and so it's like, who knows, what crazy technology we'll have, like, even 10 years from now, or how VR will be then, or if we'll get the neural link and how will that change the way we interact with not only just games but technology in general. But that's my really long-winded rant on it. This is just going to be way too long, but I think it's okay. DGK, I've seen him in the polls a few times. He says if people like it and they continue to improve upon its limitations and costs, like how consoles have been doing since they became a thing, then you can see it growing into a solid form of gaming. The biggest issue with other peripherals is that when they weren't invested in enough by the audience and subsequently abandoned by their innovators, VR, however, has been a serious interest to many gamers since before games became a main form of entertainment. It's still in its infancy since the technology just wasn't there until recently. But if you look at the history of gaming and think about how far it's come in 40 years, then VR stands as a solid chance at following the same path. All it takes is dedication and an interest. I'm looking forward to seeing its fate, though. So I think this is a pretty reasonable one, that there is a lot of interest in VR, but is there enough to pour the millions that we need to get to like the point where it's just you put on the glasses and then you're in the game? Who knows, really? Because we're still really early on in like this era of VR. I think it's too early to tell exactly how it'll turn out, but it's fun to speculate. Nick says VR is the very far future of video games, when VR is the same quality as a 4K, 144 Hz TV, and is easy to use and will replace traditional games. Also, the games have to be good and not ruin the user's vision. That's a pretty fair point. And one of the biggest things with VR is that it gives a lot of people motion sickness. I think most people will get motion sickness if they use VR. I think it's like, not most, but it's like 30% or something like that. And the fact that you need like 90 frames a second to experience VR correctly is definitely it's a drawback for making it widely accessible in terms of console games, and for a lot of the PC community, they can't play every game at 90 frames a second. A lot of them can, but a lot of them can't with every game. But Thomas JCG says it's simply impossible to make a game like The Witcher 3 for virtual reality, but it's all good. But all it is good for are weird sim and some Wii-like games. Needless to say, there isn't a huge crowd for expensive platforms that only have lame games. Sure, there is Doom. I think it's VFR, virtual fucking reality, and the like. But there aren't anywhere near as good to play as the original versions for traditional platforms. And I think this is Thomas being a bit like, like very definitive, like viewing VR as like never being able to evolve outside the capacity that it is now, which I wouldn't say isn't a fair thing to say, given the technology that it is now, and seeing that it hasn't, it's pretty much flatlined in terms of its consistency. But I do think there is, like, I think the companies, like the Sony, Oculus, and Valve and HTC, they know why people are investing into VR. It's because the games haven't gotten there yet, and the hardware is a bit too expensive and a bit too clunky for everybody. So I think they're thinking, if we can improve this, if we can make a really good VR experience where developers can make a Witcher free for VR, then I think we'll get people buying into it. So I do think one day we'll be able to get good games, like Witcher free level games in VR, Thomas. I know if you watch this video you can disagree with me, but I do think that one day we'll be able to get high quality VR games. We just gotta, I'm not saying you have to buy into VR, obviously spend your money however you want to, but I think looking at VR as only ever being the technology that it is right now, I think that's just a little, I don't know, I think it's a little bit too close-minded in my opinion. Obviously you can have whatever opinion you want to, but I do think that this technology can evolve. I mean, imagine, if you're getting on the Super Nintendo, it's like, oh, imagine if they, took like 3D polygon models and had them running around, or imagine if you could play, Mario Kart with someone across the world, and then you say, that'll never happen, and look at where we are today. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to be the case, but I mean, if you told like the average, 12-year-old kid playing Mario Kart on their SNES, and you said, well, maybe one day you'll be able to play Mario Kart with someone in Japan, and you're in like Minnesota, and he'd say, that's never going to happen. But look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and a slew of other online games we have. Technology evolves rapidly, and we never know exactly how it's going to turn out. So I think, I think I spent a lot of time ranting on this, and I didn't go through too many other replies, but I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long. So we'll go through the last two polls, hopefully relatively quickly. And this one is Daily Poll 48. Do you use walkthroughs? Another one that just randomly popped in my mind. And most people use walkthroughs occasionally, 86%, which is a lot. I use them occasionally. Portal 2, I use the walkthrough for way too much, and I ruined my experience with it. But I redeemed myself because I got Portal, the original Portal, on Steam, and I beat that with no walkthroughs, I think. Yeah, I think so. I remember being stuck on some parts, but I stuck through it. I used my brain. I beat that game without using any walkthroughs, so redeemed myself with my initial failings of Portal 2. But I've played Portal 2 several times. I've played, I think I've only played Portal once, but those games are really good. And I recommend not using walkthroughs for those games, since the fun in those games is the puzzle solving. And if you use a walkthrough, that just sort of ruins it, in my opinion, which is what I did with Portal 2, and why I was determined to not use walkthroughs for the original Portal. So, walkthroughs are something that are pretty good. Like, I've been playing through Sekiro, and I wouldn't have been able to get to the final boss without walkthroughs, and obviously the final boss is just like, you just have to be good, and I'm not that good, but hopefully, I'll be able to beat my head against the wall enough, and I'll beat Sekiro, and I'll get the new game plus. But let's look into what the community said. And Thomas says, only when the game expects me to know or do things that no sane person would. What's that? I should have glued cat hair on my face? I think that's a bit of a joke, but yeah, there are some things that are a bit like, eventually the whole point, especially with the old point click adventure games, like just some things that, are ridiculously unreasonable, so I wouldn't feel bad for, I wouldn't, poo-poo anyone for using walkthroughs in cases like that. I wouldn't poo-poo people in general for using walkthroughs. Wicked Wolf, for additional playthroughs to make sure he doesn't miss any quests, pretty fair. Retro84 says uses them now and then. These days he avoids them. Just don't like the challenges and surprises to be spoiled. Definitely understand using them for the sake of completion. Back when he was a kid and wanting to 100% all of his games. Remembers using a guide after he beat Super Mario RPG. He means some of those fraud coins are in places only bug testers will think about. So Captain Turbo Squirrel, depending on what kind of game it is, he usually uses walkthroughs on his second, third playthrough. So for most people, it's like second, third playthroughs, or to make sure they do completionist things, or only when they're really, really stuck. But we'll go on to the last daily poll, and this is a pretty another random one. Do you play strategy games? And most people said they've played some. A good amount said that they about 33%. So it was like 2/3 said they play some strategy games, and about 1/3 said they play a lot of strategy games, and then Yeah, but about, and then the rest of they don't. So very few people don't. Star Magician is pretty active in the polls. He says he likes a few Age of Empires, and Disgaea are probably his favorites. I have Disgaea 5, and it's a good game. I need to, I need to play more of it, but I like Disgaea, so Disgaea is pretty good. I like Civilization. I like Fire Emblem. I got Valkyria Chronicles, another game in my Steam library that I need to play. Ragnarok, active in the poll, says he's played Age of Empires when he was younger. Enjoys StarCraft 2's custom games. I did too. If anyone remembers Pobes versus Helots, I spent more time playing that than actual StarCraft. Since I suck at StarCraft. I started like 8 games on Civ 6, but never actually finished one. Tried CK2, but couldn't wrap his head around it. Fire Emblem Awakening was his favorite title on the 3DS when it came out, but I've never played any other FE game. I used to love Tower Defense's games though. So, Ragnarok, if you ever watch this video, Fire Emblem Awakening is a great game. I definitely agree with you. But there's if you still have your 3DS around and you want to play another Fire Emblem game, get Shadows of Valencias or Fire Emblem Echoes. It is definitely a lot different from Fire Emblem Awakening, but it's classic Fire Emblem in a really good way. Like it does mix some of the newer stuff with I wouldn't say that, but it's just a really good Fire Emblem game, and it's an absolute like swan song of a game for the last 3DS game in the Fire Emblem franchise. And then if you want the newer Fire Emblem experience, Conquest and Birthright on the 3DS are both pretty good. I would definitely recommend going with Birthright because that's a bit easier first, and then Conquest, and then there's also Revelations, which I haven't played either. But I've beaten Birthright and Awakening, and I've gotten through a good bit of Conquest, and I need to beat Conquest and Echoes before Free Houses comes out. So I need to do that soon. Fluky, I've seen him in a few daily polls, says he's had the shame of getting introduced to strategy games through mobile freemium apps, which turned him off. Later, he got Democracy Free, which he enjoyed until he stopped playing so many games and forgot about it. Should probably get back into it. Yeah, Democracy Free is a pretty good game. I like that a lot. I remember I got that game in Christmas of 2013, and I remember I had my Xbox One that I just got for Christmas, like sitting there. I was playing Democracy Free, which is like, if you look a screenshot of it, it's literally just a bunch of circles that you mess around with. I just had it. I was just playing that game while the Xbox was there, and then I played Dead Rising 3, and that was the first 8th gen game I ever played, which pretty average, I'd say. Dead Rising 3 was, but yeah, Democracy was a good game, but that was just my it's like 5 years ago at this point when I first played that game. It's a good game, Democracy Free. It's on Steam, so you could get it. But I think that has been it for Poll Review. This has been the 7th episode of Poll Review. Like I said before, I'll leave a description. In the description, I'll leave a link to all the polls I talked about, so you can check these out on your own time. And if you're new to Exclusively Games, haven't heard of it, join the forum. You can, I would love to see you, in the replies of my daily polls, or just in the forums in general. I think it's a really good community that is going on over here. Like I said, not officially endorsed by any EG staff, just doing this poll. Just doing the daily poll because I think the community likes it, and I like doing it, and I do the poll review because for the same reason. But this has been it for our 7th episode of Poll Review. Like this video if you like it. If you didn't like it, you can dislike it, and you can subscribe for more content, including the next poll review, whenever video I feel like making. So that's been it. And